Have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? Do you want to escape the rat race or have a financial edge over others? Then watch this video to the end. You've probably been told that in order to get rich, you need an Ivy League education, or you need to get on the property ladder, or you need to budget and save. The problem is, the people often given this advice aren't even rich themselves. Have you noticed that? A lot of us miss out on becoming rich because we haven't been properly educated. This stuff doesn't exactly get taught in schools, right? So let's explore the advice from someone who is qualified to speak, someone worth over $100 million to be precise. Introducing Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the most popular personal finance book of all time. If you want to live a life of financial independence, you literally can't get any better than this. Poor Dad was Kiyosaki's biological father. He was intelligent and did well in school. He thought that the key to getting rich was to study hard and get a good job, but he remained poor. Rich Dad, on the other hand, was the father of Kiyosaki's best friend. Rich Dad believed that in order to become rich, you need to learn how money works. Despite him doing terribly in school, dropping out in 8th grade, he quickly became a millionaire. In this video, I will share all the gems from the book with you. I've broken them down into 5 short chapters, so let's dive right in. Chapter 1. The rich don't work for money. Wait, what? But don't you have to work to get money? Well, of course, but rich people approach work slightly differently than the average person. Here's what I mean. For most people, their job is their income. They clock in, they clock out. Once they clock out, the money stops. Their fear of money keeps them in this cycle. They get up, go to work, get money to pay the bills, and repeat. This cycle will never make you rich. However, rich people do things slightly differently. Instead of clocking in and clocking out for a fixed rate, they're constantly finding ways to make their money work for them. Rich people have courage around money. They plan their finances out in such a way that they earn while they sleep. As Rich Dad says, the poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. You're probably wondering, okay, but how can I make money work for me? Well, you do it by acquiring assets. But what exactly are assets? This is where financial literacy comes in. Chapter 2, Financial Literacy. Kiyosaki says the more you understand about money, the more chances you have of making money work for you. The very first lesson that should be taught in financial literacy is the difference between an asset and a liability. So let's explore those. Let me begin by saying this. Cash is not an asset. Money loses value over time as more gets printed. On the same note, liabilities can also be disguised as assets like property. Controversially, Kiyosaki says that owning a property is often a liability that strips you of your wealth. Why? Well, houses are expensive, not just to purchase but to maintain. I mean, think of the costs associated with owning a property. You've got the valuation fee, surveyor's fee, legal fees, estate agent's fees, mortgage fee, stamp duty, maintenance, insurance, running costs, and a deposit. A house isn't an asset unless it goes up in value fast enough to offset these costs. Assets, on the other hand, increase in value over time without much effort or maintenance, if any at all. Things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, etc. But also physical objects too. Here's an example. Around 3 years ago, I decided to save up money for my dream watch. I began writing affirmations in the notepad every day until I got it. Honestly, if you saw my notebook, you'd think I was crazy. Every page was filled with the same line repeated over and over, just how teachers used to punish us in school when we were bad. Anyway, the time came where I finally saved up enough money to get the watch. It was actually the day before the COVID lockdown in the UK. I drove to the watch dealer, got the watch, and then held on to it for 3 years. In that time, the watch more than doubled in its value. The watch was an asset. If I didn't buy the watch, and let's just say I held on to the money, the liability, today I would still have that exact same amount of money, nothing more. In fact, it will probably be worth a lot less because of inflation. Money is a liability. It automatically loses value by standing still. Assets tend to do the opposite. But Carl, my 9 to 5 doesn't nearly give me enough money to save for assets. Well then, you need to mind your own business. Chapter 3, Mind Your Own Business. You will never get truly rich by working for someone else. You'll make them rich before you make yourself rich. Kiyosaki explains that you should become your own boss by building your own business. However, this doesn't mean you should immediately hand in your notice and start building away. In fact, Kiyosaki says that you should keep your job, but instead of buying liabilities or spending money on things that add no real value, use that money to invest in assets instead. Now, don't get me wrong, this journey is not fun and progress can be incredibly slow. I was literally living almost in malnourishment when I was saving for my watch. I completely cut out every unnecessary expenditure and just lived off chicken and rice every day. It's not a sexy journey, trust me, but it does pay off. If you want to know what to invest in, pick something that matches your attitude to risk. For me, I prefer safety, so I primarily stick to index funds. The S&P 500 is a good place to start, and please don't go for get rich quick schemes unless you want to get poor quick. So you can invest money, but what if I told you you could invent money? Chapter 4, The Rich Invent Money. Kiyosaki says the single most powerful asset we have is our mind. If it's trained well, it can create enormous wealth. A huge amount of people are born with the potential to do well with money, but that potential ends up being chained down by the anxieties and fear of modern life. Since Rich Dad Poor Dad was published, there have been 4 major stock market crashes. The real estate crash in 1989, the dot-com bubble in 2001, the housing crash in 2008, and the COVID crash in 2020. The crazy part? All of these stock market crashes were investment opportunities. Why? Because stock markets almost always bounce back. Honestly, it's like 4 steps forward, 1 step back for some of these markets. During these crashes, those who simply held and continued to invest were really just purchasing stock at a huge discount. And as a result, they made huge profits when the market bounced back again. This is where knowledge comes in. With knowledge, you can begin to make money in places that the average person can't. You can invent money. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Humans are designed to learn by making mistakes. We learn to walk by falling down. If we never fell down, we would never walk. But how do you learn like a rich person? Chapter 5. Learn like a rich person. Kiyosaki says, when you are young, work to learn, not to earn. For most people, they start a job, learn how the job is done, and it all stops there. But for the rich, they're more interested in whether the stuff they learn fits in with their bigger picture. For example, if you want to be a successful business owner one day, then you need to learn how to work with existing successful businesses and learn how they work, right? Let's look at McDonald's cheeseburgers. What do you think about them? Pretty average? I mean, I can make a better cheeseburger to be honest, but McDonald's makes a huge amount of money from their burgers. Why? Because they've learned how to do proper business. If you want to earn proper money, then you need to learn how to do proper business. In order to escape the rat race, you can't follow the rat race rules. If you want to make lots of money, prioritize building your skills and knowledge in business, communication, writing, speaking, negotiating, and sales. But make sure whatever it is you want to do fulfills you. You're going to be spending the majority of your life doing it. This book is a must-read for any entrepreneur. It is easily one of the most powerful financial books of our generation, with tons of reviews from people saying the book completely changed their world. For me, it not only revolutionized my outlook on making money, but it also completely changed my view on investing, financial literacy, and education. And listen, if you're feeling intimidated about the whole acquiring assets thing, remember this. You were already born with the biggest asset that you will ever own. That asset is you. You are your biggest asset, and only your actions can dictate whether your value will go up or go down. So what actions will you start taking? And as always, thanks for watching.